Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be talking about basic meter. I'm bringing this up because it's sort of hard to introduce these concepts in a way. So we need to first talk about what is meter. Meter is the way you break up a segment of time. And it's the way you give emphasis to the way you break up a segment of time, if that makes any sense. So what we're going to do is we have some span of time here, like span A, and we're going to break it up, span A, into 4 equal chunks. And so we're going to have chunk 1, chunk 2, chunk 3, chunk 4. And instead of calling them chunks, let's call them beats. But the beat only refers to the exact moment when you switch to the next beat. So you have beat 1, which was originally chunk 1. That's the very, 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 very first moment, the infinitesimally small moment. That's the beat. And then you go to the next, and the moment you switch over to the next chunk or beat, that is the beat. The very moment you switch. So we call the whole moment the beat. But the reason why it's only that moment where you switch is because you could break it up further. So you could take, like, for example, beat 1, and you could break that up into smaller chunks. Now, those are called subdivisions. We use the term a beat as our measuring stick. And you see here, we can visualize it quite nicely with the grid. So here is our span of time. We'll call it span of time A. In music, we call them measures. So this is a measure. This is measure 1. And you see we have measure 2. So we have these measures that are being broken up. And then we break this measure up into beats. And that's what we'll be using a lot mostly when we write rhythms and things, is we'll be talking in terms of beats and subdivisions of beats. And then when we talk about form and the way a series of measures forms a concept, we'll be using measures, or sometimes people will replace the term measures with bars. So they'll say, hey, 4 bars. They're saying, hey, look at 4 measures. That's what they're saying. So we have these terms, and meter is the way we break this up. But again, I said there's like an order, a hierarchy that goes on here. So we have beat 1. So here's our measure 1. And then we have beat 1. And then we have beat 2, which is right here. And then we have beat 3, la 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 la. You get the idea. Then we break those down. And you see in here we have these smaller bar lines. Now they go straight to 4, right? But in reality, if we were to break this in half again, we'd only have 2. Those are eighth notes. So I'm going to assume you've watched my MIDI music theory series. You know about some of this stuff. Eighth notes, and then that is obviously a 16th because you broke it in half again. So 8 times 2 is 16. So we call them 16th notes because 16 of these little bars, these little bricks essentially, are inside one measure in 4/4. So this is where it gets this is where we can get a little weird. So this is basic meter. We're going to revisit meter a little bit later, but this is just like the concept of it. So here we've got a meter, and it is 4/4. Why is it 4/4? Well, our span of time A, so we have our measure 1, our measure, the unit that we use to get our beats from, has 4 beats in it. So we call it 4/4. So we have, so the 4 on, okay. So 4/4 refers to the number of beats and what note gets the beat. So when I say 4, you would write this out on top, like 4 and then a 4 underneath it. The top note denotes how many beats there are in a measure. So we have that. The bottom note refers to what note gets the beat. And so this becomes a very important thing in rhythm, and something I'm not going to get into too much here. But right now, the quarter note gets the beat, and the quarter note is 1 beat long. Now we have this concept of, well, I thought the beat was that one moment where you cross over. Well, that's when the beat happens. But the beat, when people refer to it as a length, they refer to it as a whole quarter length. So 1/4 of our measure. Now it gets weird because we're going to get into meters that have only 3 beats. And you would say, oh, does the quarter become like, a third or something? The answer is no. It stays a quarter because, I don't know. There are reasons for some of this stuff, I guess. But anyways, you can always know that 1 beat is a quarter note. Always. It's just the law of the universe. Because you get into things like 6/8 and stuff. But, well, a quarter note is always that length anyways. If that makes sense. Because you'll get into things like 6/8 where the 8th note gets the beat. So this was originally worth 1 beat, and we chop it in half. Now this would get the beat in 6/8. So we're gonna be getting into stuff like this a little bit later because they're just confusing concepts at the beginning. So we're gonna be working our way up through different meters and seeing things. But basically, we have this way of breaking down a measure, and we have this way of interpreting how it should happen. Now, all this breaking down is great, but it must be run against a unit of time. So that's called our beats per minute. How many of these beats happens in a minute? That's the question. And if we were to do 60 beats per minute, that'd be the same speed as your clock. We'd have every beat would be equivalent to 1 second, and there would be 60 beats in a minute. And so that's what BPM stands for. That's what we have up here. It's also called tempo. And we talked about choosing, see, we have BPM, beats per minute, and we talked about choosing these earlier and some of the implications they can have. So that's really interesting. Now, there's another level to meter, though, and then we're going to move on to some other things in future videos. The next level to meter is meter will infer that some of these beats are more important than other beats. So, for example, the downbeat, the first beat, and then so in 4/4, it's kind of an interesting deal because you could call, so downbeats have some interesting connotations in music. Some musicians will say downbeats and they'll be referring to just go and pick up on a major beat, meaning beat 1 or beat 2, beat 3 or beat 4. But in a meter, they're looked at from a different context because the emphasis of what note is a downbeat and what note is an upbeat changes according to your meter. And a lot of musicians, they just talk and it almost always makes sense what they're trying to tell you. So you could say that. But for us in 4/4, the measure would be counted. So we would have to count this. And because there's a unit of time, something that's consistent, we can derive a rhythm from this, right? And so we could count it as like, let's say that this is our tempo, and that would be the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the space in between my claps is represented by this here like vast cavern of space that we could zoom in on forever and add notes and stuff. So we have that. Now, what note, which one? So we have these numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which one of those numbers is the most important number? The most important number is 1 in this case. And 4/4, traditional 4/4, like the meter of 4/4, 1, and then all the other ones would be less important. So you'd count it like sort of like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. But there's all sorts of additional things like for that sounds sort of like, if we were to do this faster, it sounds sort of like an Indian chant, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. It just sounds kind of like this interesting deal. But of course, no one really does that in 4/4. What they do is they add another emphasis. They give beat 3 almost as much power as beat 1. Not quite as powerful as beat 1, but beat 3 gets quite a bit of power. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you get something like that. And then, of course, a very common thing in genres like ska, they will give these upbeats they'll give them some emphasis. So let's go ahead. I'm going to write out some tonal rhythms just to show you what I mean. So I'm going to turn this into a pluck sound and just come over here. And so these are quarter notes, of course, because we know about note lengths. You went and watched MIDI music theory if you were lost. And so we're not going to be dealing with volumes or anything right now. Well, actually, we are going to be dealing with volumes. That's exactly what we're here for. So these three, so this would be a typical like true 4/4 in that sort of strict meter sense. And so if we gave beat 3 more power, and now, of course, we have those upbeats, and sometimes the downbeat will hit, and then the upbeats will get, some emphasis instead. So we'll emphasize the upbeats. And you see, we get that, and a lot of people will play like chords, like do dun do dun do dun do dun, and you see these are less important than these in that case. And so that's another thing. So this is just meter as an idea. When I talk about meter and we talk about things like 3/4, 4/4, 6/8, just remember that the top note refers to the number of beats that there are, and the bottom note refers to what note gets that beat. So we have, and then typically 1, and then you'd count out the rest, but there are conventions that go with particular meters. So like 3/4 is really, really simple. It is interpreted like it should be, without like this because 4/4, not that as it should be, but just as like it was academically sort of approached as. So it'd be 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3, and I'm counting up 1 2 3 4 because I'm going through my measures, right? So people, they know that the number is going to be 1. So what they do is instead they use that number to count the measures. But it'd be 1 2 3 1 2 3 1, and that sounds like a waltz, do 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 do, that sort of a thing. So that is sort of our basic introduction to meter when we get into rhythms, and you can see it becomes quite interesting how this can happen, because a lot of times in a lot of songs they'll be giving this upbeat feel, but they'll have two entirely different timbres hitting. So like they'll have a kick over here, and they'll have a guitar over here, which sound worlds apart. And so the kick might be louder than the guitar, but because it's a timbral change, your brain does this weird thing where you say, oh, well, the downbeat's important, but the upbeat is also important, but they're different kinds of importance. And then your brain starts to go, wow, this is really interesting, and you listen. So that's just a little introduction to meter, and we will be diving further into it as we get into particular meters. If you have any questions, let me know. Support me on Patreon, subscribe, and have a blessed day.